Let's bring in my other colleagues as well now, Dr. Ronesh Dhawraj, who is News Editor of Research at the SABC, as well as our social media guru, Sthembiso, Sithole. Thank you very much to you both for joining us. First, let me start with you. Lots of interaction on social media. Talk to us about what we're seeing, especially in the run-up to this Congress. What do we see?
Well, Griselda, we know that the Democratic Alliance, they have a verified Twitter account and a Facebook page.
Yeah.
They have been utilizing those platforms in the build-up to this Congress to really make sure that they inform the public in terms of what they are, of course, will be taking place here at the Congress. As we put that some of those tweets on the screen, the activities today, of course, you have seen a lot of delegates coming here, being excited, and in that social media platform, in their accounts, they were painting that picture in terms of how excited are those individuals in terms of those and the build-up, and also most importantly, they use that platform to really engage on some of the key issues that they'll be touching on. You recall that today they'll be looking into the issue of resolutions and their political party reports that the DA, in terms of the achievements, their wins and their losses in between. But the party itself has actually been using social media to really send the message in between.
Interesting, the John Steenhuisen and Paul Palazzi, how these leaders within the Democratic Alliance are using the platform last minute.
Very interesting as we go to put that tweet on screen. Paul Palazzi, she has a lot of social media followers. She's verified herself, and she has actually made sure that she positioned herself on this using social media to send her messaging to really show South Africans, even the delegates, indirect and direct, to influence them in terms of what is it that she would possibly do should she be elected. You'll recall that earlier on I spoke to her. We showed that clip where she was just being confident and really reflecting in terms of the past, the things that she's done in the past, but most importantly now chanting a way forward on the possibilities of what she could possibly do. And John as well, his account is verified. He's very active there. Most of the time retweets what the Democratic Alliance puts on their account. Once again, really going hard on the ruling party, criticizing it. We know his tweets there about load shedding, expressing his views, and we also spoke to him as well there, where he was articulating the possibility if he should be really re-elected, some of the key things that we look into. So what we're seeing here, we're seeing two leaders who are understanding that there are a lot of young people on social media, but the big question is, would that translate to the votes here in this Congress?
And that's exactly what I wanted to come to Dr. Dhawraj about. A lot on social media, canvassing, but the ultimate decision is with these more than 2,000 delegates that are at this Congress. How important is this Congress for the Democratic Alliance, Dr. Dhawraj, going to the 2024 election? And what kind of leadership needs to emerge from this Congress that will be appealing to what the DA would be to the majority of people in this country?
Griselda, I think this Congress is going to prove very, very important, very significant for the DA, because if you take your mind back to 2019, that was the first time that the DA's electoral fortunes actually declined since 1994. They lost around 470,000 votes. They decreased in 6 of the 9 provinces. They made marginal increases in 3 provinces, KZN, Free State, and just, I think, an extra 500 votes in the Northern Cape. So in terms of policy direction, policies need to be stamped here, rubber stamped here. A clear direction needs to be given from the DA leadership when the DA leadership, that new leadership, is elected. We know what happened preceding to the 2019 elections. The DA was in total disarray. We saw Mmusi Maimane, the leader, resigning soon after. But before he resigned, there was a report. Mmusi Maimane, as the DA leader, actually commissioned that report. He got in Ryan Coetzee, the former CEO of the DA. He called in Michelle Leroux, and the other person was the former DA leader as well, Tony Leon. They came out with a 31-page report. In that report, they said there were 4 objectives for the 2019 national and provincial elections. The first one is national growth. The second one is to get the DA, get the ANC below the 50% mark in Gauteng, very importantly. The third one was getting the ANC below the 50% mark in the Northern Cape. And of course, the last one was retaining the majority in the Western Cape. Of those 4 objectives, they achieved only one, and that was retaining the Western Cape. But the caveat is they retain the Western Cape, but with a decreased majority. So in essence, that election did not go as the DA had actually planned. And in the recommendations, these three guys made one very, very important recommendation that actually stands out for me. And this takes me back to every time the current DA leader has attacked Mmusi Maimane. He says, but this was a leader who abandoned the party. He just, went AWOL. But that was not the case, because that recommendation that these three guys made, Tony Leon, Michelle Leroux, and Ryan Kutsia, says that the CEO of the party has to resign, the federal council chair has to resign. That was Jay himself. He retired at the time. So the CEO actually resigned. So it was only coming that Mmusi Maimane, as party leader, take ownership of the failures of the 2019 election campaign, and he step aside. And that's exactly what happened. So all this criticism that John Steenhuisen, labeled against Mmusi Maimane, eventually they had a Twitter fight, so to speak. Maimane calling Steenhuisen John Judas Steenhuisen, the biblical reference. I think it's totally unwarranted, because this Congress, as it stands, whichever leadership comes through, I think the message has to be clear. What happened in 2019, very importantly, they've led support. Obviously with the Patricia DeLille story, what happened there? She formed her own party. She won 2 seats in the National Assembly. That bit away support from the DA. And secondly, very, very importantly, is the Freedom Front Plus. The DA maybe was moving too much to the left, and they kind of abandoned their core constituency, and mainly those conservative white voters, they gravitated toward the Freedom Front Plus, and that's why they increased their seats from 4 to 10. And so the DA needs to capture that constituency back again.
And that was a question that I put to the DA's chief whip, Sithole Haube, in which he concedes that, yes, indeed, for example, in one of the issues that comes up is about the establishment of a judicial commission into farm murders. Now, in 2019, the Democratic Alliance, of course, had lost support to the Freedom Front Plus and Good as well. Now, with this resolution, you now, a few months prior or even less than a year to the election, you're bringing this issue up that possibly cost you this white conservative vote, if I can.
I think it's going to be a very, very important issue for the DA, because the perception is the DA has moved more towards the left and kind of abandoned those key constituencies that have actually helped their electoral fortunes from 1994 to 2019. But what happened is they need to make that that lost ground that they lost to the Freedom Front Plus. So I think this will be a very important electoral issue. They need to identify with those voters that they actually lost favor with. Whether they will actually win back those voters, I highly doubt it. Maybe they might make a slight increase in these elections, but again, their policies have to be clear. The flip-flopping on issues like racism, on race, I see you, I don't see you, that kind of thing. The issue around BEE as well, that created a lot of confusion. There were lots of social media fights among DA leaders, prominent DA leaders, and that's why the DA, if you look at all the resolutions, all the amendments, there are 82 amendments, the majority of those amendments that they're proposing right now, as you and I sit here, they're voting on those amendments, actually deals with party discipline. What happens? They're giving the Federal Legal Commission more teeth to act on those people who are kind of bringing the DA into disrepute, because they've kind of noticed there are holes, and those holes need to be plugged just 1 year before that election. But yes, absolutely, that's going to be a very, very important electoral issue, especially for the DA. They want to gain back that lost support that they lost to the Freedom Front Plus.
Social media can be good and it can also be bad. I mean, we've this part that Dr. Dhawraj speaks about is about the Democratic Alliance sort of tightening on internal party discipline. Social media is one of the aspects on that. Are we seeing a lot of, the DA leadership or even the Democratic Alliance on its page posting about some of the policies and trying to talk to South Africans on what is taking place here
Very
today.
interesting. And before that, Griselda, I think what's also important, that some of the key things that this new leadership will need to attend to is how these Twitter wars that happened with the previous DA leaders, in terms of how they respond to that, because that has affected the party negatively in terms of the social media sentiment, particularly online. You'll recall the likes of Van Dam, Pumzile, Balintuli. They've left the Democratic Alliance, but of course, in between, of course, there will be those clashes or comments, disagreements in terms of the allegations that might have been leveled against them. So the new leadership really has to a task to attend to that, particularly on those social media policies. But responding to you in that matter, they are posting those policies, but the most important thing is that what does that mean practically?
Is the messaging clear?
I think the messaging is there. It's just basically looking into what is that you need to do. These are your guidelines. But the key thing is the practicality of that. And whoever will emerge will then have to really outline that and put those measures in place.
All right, I'm afraid, gentlemen, that's all we have time for. I'm sure the rest of the teams are going to continue to have a discussion with you. Really appreciate your time. My colleagues, Sthembiso Sithole, who is, of course, our social media guru here at the SABC, as well as Dr. Ronesh Dhawraj, who is a news editor of the research department here at the SABC. That's where I'm going to have to leave it for this afternoon, but we'll continue our coverage here live from Gallagher Estate at the DA's federal elective Congress. Those 2,000 delegates are still continuing with those constitutional amendments, voting on that. But we'll only get to learn sometime tomorrow who emerges as the leader of the Democratic Alliance. Will it be John Steenhuisen or Paul Palazzi?